You can catch up with all our shows by visiting our YouTube channel or by listening back at ttradio.org. Don't forget to like and subscribe to enjoy more live education conversation from TTR. We hope you enjoy this show.
Outstanding and world-class vision and world-class this.
I'm a real leadership geek, honestly. I've spent my whole career reading books and chatting to people.
I just find the whole thing and the announcement, the way it's been announced, bizarre.
If you could move away from a model where teachers are so intensely focused.
Hello and welcome to Teachers Talk Radio, Points of View midweek. I'm delighted to be here and thank you very much for tuning in. If you're either watching live or listening back, drop us a comment in, give us a like, give us a share, get involved in the conversation. Let us know what your thoughts are as this conversation goes on. Before we get into it, we're obviously going to be talking about the huge heat wave and the issues that have come off the back of that, I guess, in the news and in schools, etc. We're going to be getting into that in some detail in a few minutes' time. Just before we do that and sort of kick off the show, I just wanted to really say a few things about one of our host team who sadly passed away just last week, which was Megan. And I thought it would be really sort of remiss of me to not talk about Megan for a bit at the start of the show and really dedicate the show tonight to her in terms of, you know, what we do at Teachers Talk Radio. So Megan, I met Megan in 2020. Originally when I was doing EduDate, this was separate to TTR. This was before TTR existed. And she helped me out with that. I remember she did sort of a Channel 5 interview about EduDate at the time, and she was involved there. And then when the time came when Teachers Talk Radio was set up in February 2021, she was one of the people at the outset who was involved. And initially she was involved in creating sort of the news content for TTR. And then further to that, from sort of 22, 23 onwards, she's been involved all the way through in our sort of audio promotional voice work, voice artist work, post-production work. She's written blogs for us. And we've obviously through that over the 5 years been in touch. And I was just chatting to her a couple of weeks ago. At the moment, we've got some audio promotion running from Football Association, and she was involved with that. So she's just been an amazing person who's supported Teachers Talk Radio right from the beginning. She's been involved right from the start. She's always, you know, whenever I spoke to her, she said, yeah, I'll do that. I'll do this. And sort of somebody who's really positive, energetic, always willing to chip in. And from a professional standpoint, obviously she was a head of school over in Namibia. Very, very talented to become. I mean, I think anyone in education knows how difficult it is to be a senior leader, but to become a head of school at the age of 30 it is a testament to her talent and who she was and what she could do. So it's really just a tribute. And obviously she tragically lost her life very suddenly last week. So everybody at TTR, I know loads of people on TTR in our host platform have made comments. Lots of people on LinkedIn. She'll be hugely missed by everybody. I just want to say, you know, she'll never be forgotten by me personally. And I'm sure everybody at TTR sends sort of thoughts and prayers to the family of her as well. So that's that. Okay. Let's move on to the show today. And we've talked a lot this week about the climate crisis, and the UK has shattered record books this week. We've had 36 degrees. I think it's the highest temperatures on record or something in June. Hottest June days in history in the UK. Over 1,500 schools have been forced to fully or partially close their doors. We've had a massive reaction online from parents, very split in their view on this, and split commentaries as well. The Department of Education has said schools should try to stay open. I saw one blog actually in Coffee Shop Spectator of an anonymous head teacher saying, you know, that schools should be staying open for the full hit. and it's very, it's not right to be closing over this. We need to dig in. We need to, show more resilience, etc. But obviously, there's been other reactions too, in terms of buildings not fit for purpose. We're not able to cope with this. We're not kitted out to cope with it. But also this idea that, sort of children can't learn once it gets to a certain amount of heat. And obviously, there's huge wider questions on the back of this as well. The reaction from different communities to the teaching profession on the back of this has been pretty mad, pretty wild in some places, and certainly strong. So we're going to discuss all of that tonight. I'm going to bring on our 5 panelists. So we've got Rich Walkden, we've got Kit, we've got Lucy, we've got Maud, and we've got Alan. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Teachers Talk Radio. I think it would be good, first off the bat, because we've got 2 head teachers on, 2 current head teachers. I thought it would be good first to go maybe to Rich and then to Alan. If you could maybe tell us, Rich, to kick off, what's your take on this from a school on the ground level? How have you dealt with this, and what are your thoughts on it all? Rich, we can't hear you. I thought that was just me. Can anybody else hear Rich? No, Rich, we can't hear you. I don't know if you can hear us. We can bring Rich back later. Alan, what is your take on this?
My take is that. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
My take is that I can't believe we're having this conversation. So in 1976, it was hotter than it is now, but everyone got on with it. So we've stayed open yesterday. We stayed open today. It's hot. Of course it's hot, but they're hot in school. They're hot at home. And I just think that, I can say to you, in the last 2 days in Caldecott, they haven't learned much about Macbeth. They haven't learned much about Oxbow Lakes. They haven't learned much about, the periodic table. What they've learned is the hidden curriculum, resilience, getting on with it. You push through. Is the real world. Farmers have had to go to work. Nurses and doctors have had to go to work. And we are preparing students for life. So we've stayed open. I could have shut my school. I could have had 100% attendance for the last 2 days. As it turns out, I've had 55% and 35% the last 2 days. But it's the right thing to do. I'm trying to build in them. You come to school, it's resilient. And we've had fun, I've got an ice cream van there today and yesterday. We've had great fun lunchtime. We've had water fights. I think our students will look back on the last 2 days and think they were the happiest 2 days they've ever had in school. But come on, why are we even having this discussion? Why? I don't get it. It's just a bit hot.
Alan, I knew I could trust you just to start it off brilliantly. So thank you for that. Maud, do you agree that this is just a bit of heat, as Alan says, and we need to be more resilient and get on with it?
Well, I think it depends on positionality, really. As you know, I'm French, and at the moment it's 10 degrees higher in France. And French schools are at the same level of the UK. They don't have aircon. They don't have facilities that are really sustainable to deal with climate change as a whole. So I think more than should we be opened or should we be, Alan is just leaving.
No, sorry. I'm
joking.
Sorry, I'm eating my supper and I didn't think anyone wanted to see that. All right?
All right, as long as you're not leaving because of me, that's fine.
Well, I am listening, but I'm eating my supper. Is that right?
Okay, bon appétit. So I think it's a bigger question, to be fair. I think schools are not ready to face climate change, and rather than saying should schools be closed or open, we should say when are we going to make schools fit fit for purpose. Because in my colleague's classroom, we have a new building, by the way. It costs millions of pounds. It's all swanky. Imagine a kind of bank building with lots of glass and concrete. Yeah. So new building was inaugurated 3 years ago, maximum, I think. And there's no aircon in the building. So my colleagues opened all the windows, and then they were told, oh, you need to keep them shut because there's a cooling system, la la la. And they took pictures and they sent it to the WhatsApp, and some of the pictures were 30 degrees. So obviously I love 30 degrees. I love summer. So, but my problem is it's not just about me. I'm fit and I'm lucky. Some people are not. I have colleagues who have chronic diseases. I have colleagues who are perimenopausal. I have students with chronic diseases, very vulnerable students. And the fact that they are told, just, undo your top button and then you'll be fine. I think it's not taking good care of children. I talk as a parent there.
Alan, Maud, can I just stop you there? Because I feel like Alan wants to come in on that. I could see a look on his face.
He's ready.
Said
okay.
That. Alan, do you want to come in on that?
Well, I finished my supper, so I can go now. Yeah, I understand. Children will be a bit uncomfortable. It will be hot. They have to do it. But we are preparing them for life. Life is hard. It's hot. It's difficult. Farmers have to farm. Nurses have to nurse, doctors have to be doctors. It's uncomfortable. I think the problem we got with at the moment, isn't it, is we are sort of getting across to our children that life is perfect, life is easy, life will never be uncomfortable, and if it is, kick off. That's not right. That's not right. It's hot. We'll be sweaty. We'll be stuffy. Get on with it. We are training them for life. So the fact that you've just said that, they might have to undo their top button. Oh, come on.
Tom, can I come from a climate scientist point of view?
But in our country, right? In our country.
We'll let Alan finish. Go on.
But in our country, we sort of say we want to empathize with Ukraine. We want to empathize with the Middle East, right? We feel sorry for them. But once it gets a bit hot in our country, we have to close down. I don't get it.
Kit, do you want to come in?
Yeah. So just for contents, people who don't know me, I work at the Tyndall Centre Research for Climate Change at the University of Stanley. I'm also an ex-teacher for 13 years. So I've kind of got foot in both camps. So first of all, I respect Alan's point of view. Unfortunately, that's a false equivalence with regards to the 1973. What people have got to remember, of course, yes, there's all these pictures of children playing outside, hoses in the street, but also, they also tend not to remember the water shortages, the wildfires, the failed harvest, the heat illness, and the deaths from 1973 either. And the other thing as well, so I've just got 4 points to make. So first of all, the baseline climate has changed, right? So a 1976 style event today would not be the same event. In fact, the Met Office has just done, and the university researchers have just done a piece of research for the 50th anniversary of the 1976 heat wave, and a comparable event today would be 3 degrees hotter in today's climate. And the average UK summer back then were 1.4 degrees cooler. So it's not just a case of this one-off event, grit and bear it, and just things like that. We're now living in a climate where the attitudes of the 1970s is grit and bear it, get through it, just do not apply anymore. Okay. The second thing now is that extreme heat is more likely now. So that the chances of us exceeding 40 degrees Celsius is now 20 times more likely than the 1960s. And there's another 50-50 chance that we might get another, one in just the next 12 days, which is ridiculous. So that's the second thing. The third thing, and obviously I've got 4 in total, schools now have clearer guidance and duties. And my research is actually about how climate change is a school safeguarding and issue and a child wellbeing issue. So I've got a lot of expertise in this area. And the thing is that, the DFE's own climate risk summary suggests that overheating affects learning when the indoor temperature reaches 35 degrees, and learning can become very, very difficult. And, and when you've got the UK HSA saying children are vulnerable to heat and a red heat health alert, this doesn't just mean, children need to suck it up at school. It also means that there's a risk to life even for healthy population. And I was at an event up in Norfolk for these last couple of weeks, and there were actually children fainting, and it was probably cooler in that tent that I was in rather than in the classroom for some of them. And my last one, just before I give way, is the we cope then is not a safeguarding standard by any stretch of the imagination, right? So anecdote is not risk assessment. So for example, HSC, they say that heat is a workplace hazard. So why that should apply to adults and not apply to children is a bit worrying, actually, to hear that from a head teacher, to be honest. And even though there's no legal maximum head teacher, in school terms, that does mean adapting practice to current conditions and not relying on the remembered toughness from about 50 years ago. So you could argue they're my 4 opening points.
Should we give Alan a chance to speak again, just to come
Please
back
do.
on that? You don't have to, Alan. We can turn to Rich if you want.
Turn to Rich. I think, turn to Rich. I think, but what I would say to Kit is I respect all the things he said, but I just think we talk about resilience, we talk about risk assessment. It's all a little bit airy fairy, and what society have we created? So we have to go to work. We have to get on with it. How are we preparing our young people to go into the world of work and deal with heat and all the other things? And I get about risk assessments, but risk assessments is you assess the risk, but then you use common sense. Whereas at the moment, I think we hide behind them. And I Kit, you seem a nice bloke, but I don't buy a lot what you just said.
Rich, do you want to come in?
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, guys, for the delay getting on site. I've listened to Alan and then Kate and Maud, and from our own perspective, in being in the building for the last 4 days, I'm in a halfway house here. I get what Alan's saying, and in dealing with the parents that I've been dealing with and the staff I've been dealing with, I'm almost conflicted with what my own impression of this. First and foremost, the most important aspect of this all is kid safety. Our building was built in 1931. It's on numerous floors. In the top floor of our building, we're talking in them classrooms up to 39 degrees. So I get it. The bottom line, what the points Kit is making is absolutely bang on. First and foremost, are the kids safe? If they're not safe, then your school should not be open. That's 100% where we are. And if we think anything other than that, then I'd be extremely worried. I'm going to come back to your point in a minute, Alan, because I get on board, Alan, what you're saying a lot there. But it's also about common sense as well. It's also about making sure that kids are looked after, people are safe. It's also clear communication with all stakeholders. So one of the biggest things we did this week, fundamentally, it was about the uniform. So it's not just opening your top button up, which is absolute nonsense. It's about making sure, that the rooms are fit for purpose, which I'm hoping they are. It's about just for the uniform. So we immediately put kids in PE uniforms. Not a massive thing, but it makes a big difference. The fact that kids are coming in shorts, t-shirt, they're not overloaded with jumpers, etc., which made a big difference. It's also making sure that them adjustments are also made for staff. We've got colleagues here in classrooms for 5 hours a day, 5 days a week in them temperatures. It's also making sure that those staff are looked after. Back to Alan's point, I've had numerous conversations with parents and also with kids as well, but I will say it's an art school of 1,800, by the way. So it's a huge building, a huge operation. Them kids have stepped up. Have some kids whinged and moaned? Of course we have. We're in a middle of the biggest heat wave for 50 years. But the kids have stepped up. And I think the reason why is the communication from the school has been clear to the parents and the kids of what is expected on a day-to-day basis. And that's the key in this. Go back to Alan's point. I have to agree with a little bit of that. I mean, do you build resilience in classrooms that are 40 degrees? I'm not quite sure. I think resilience comes when kids are in a safe space to move and grow. But the point that Alan makes is I think the profession is in a position where schools need to be full of role models. Schools need to make sure that they are setting the tone. And I get on board with what Kit is saying, but I think Alan's made some good points there about the message that schools are sending out to the stakeholders and to the people in the community. But first and foremost, kids and staff, they have to be safe to do the job. The quality of learning is also a big thing for me, because what has been the quality of learning this week, I'm not so sure. But I can answer Alan's point by saying we've as a school and as a community, we've talked about the fact of dealing with this issue, dealing with the fact they're going to have to show grit. They're going to have to dig deep and get through the 5 hours a day that's taking place this week. But I think that there's merits in both what people have said. I'm sitting on the fence there because I see it from both sides of the equation.
Tom, I'm not sitting on the fence, right? Kit has made some good points, but it's from an idealistic point of view. So my point is, of course, but Kit comes from the point of view of that our students live in houses which are...
I'm an ex-teacher of 13 years, just to remind you.
Fine, remind me whatever you want, Kit. Air-conditioned houses. They don't live in air-conditioned houses. They don't. No. Lots of them live in houses which are cramped. Parents have got to go out to work. They're left to their own devices. They haven't got water. They haven't got lollipops. They'll be out. They'll be getting sunburned. They might go to open water.
I can respond to that, Tom, after Alan's finished, but I'd like to hear from Lucy first.
I would rather look after them in school, all right? And I agree with Rich. They haven't had the best quality of lessons this week, but they've had some quality of lessons this week. And they've also learned the importance of attendance and resilience. And I just think, of course, in an ideal world, everyone is safe in air-conditioned environments. That isn't the real world. We play the cards we're dealt.
So can I just come in first, because I have something to say about this show's partners, because this show is brought to you in partnership with Hachette Learning, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Level up your professional development today and visit www.hachetteLearning.com to explore the full range of titles. Now, I probably am going to almost entirely agree with Alan. And Alan, you might have seen me pulling my sulky teenager faces because I was thinking nobody's allowed to make my points. Nobody's allowed to say what I was going to say. And then he did, because this is the thing. We have kids, predominantly teenagers, because I think primary, I don't know this, but I was speaking to a lady today in a coffee shop, and she had her children, and she said it was the only primary school that was closed, and they closed because they had flooded in the storm that we had earlier on this week, and they're open again tomorrow. So that was why they were closed. But you've predominantly got teenagers. Now, I know my kids are all adults now, but I know that my sons would have sat in a room with their PlayStation boiling hot in front of that screen without me to remind them to drink plenty, without me telling them to eat properly, or they would have been out playing football in the blazing sun with all their, what do they say, mad dogs and Englishmen. You know, they don't think about these things. Kids just react to the now. That's why they need adult supervision. And so for me, there was that concern. Last month, we had 15 people, and quite a few of them were teenagers, who died in open waterways of one sort or another because they were cooling down in rivers and quarries and things. Now, I haven't heard any reports of that, although I've not really been on the, listening to the news or anything. And I hope that's not the case. And I hope that people have borne that in mind. But I do worry about teenage kids being unsupervised in this weather, and just taking their own ideas into their own hands. Oh, I want to go and suntan because I want to look good and things. I just think there is a risk from things like that. I said to my husband and I were both in the Navy, and he said to me, add 10 degrees to this, and then imagine you're on the back of a destroyer on the flight deck, down in the Gulf. And I think it's fair enough to say that, you do have to work in high temperatures. So my daughter is a chef. She was praying they didn't have to go into work today because the kitchen would be so hot. She's messaged me this afternoon and said it's 39 degrees. It's absolutely awful. But she's getting on with it. My eldest son is a doctor. He had to go into work today. He works in A&E. He's had a couple of days off today. He's back in working. I don't know how he's done, but he said it's going to be really hot. But there was no complaint from him. I do have to say I have a third child, and he's home for a couple of days, and he's upstairs on his PlayStation. So even though he's an adult, because that's the kind of fun that you still have. So I think we have to take responsibility for children in a way that we don't for adults. Somebody said to me on Twitter, there because I expressed my views. I don't think schools should be closing. I think that children's safety, I think telling children it is not safe to be at school, which I seem to remember we did in 2020 and 2021, I think had long lasting legacies that we're only just getting over, and we're straight back to it. It's different for a snow day. It is different for a snow day because you've got teachers trying to come in on dangerous roads, buses. Where I am in Somerset, which today was the place that hit the highest temperature, the buses won't travel and bring kids in, and we had, I reckon it must have been around 30 buses that brought kids to the school that I worked in. So we're talking about, you know, issues of infrastructure more than anything. However, having said that, I think that you know, Kit made a point that we are getting these hot days. I wouldn't call this a heat wave. I thought a heat wave had to be, it wasn't the temperatures, it was the length of time that you sustain those temperatures, and we may just have hit that. However, well, I studied a bit of climate as well in my own university
28
degree,
days in the east of England. It depends on which part of the country, but in the east of England, for example, it's 27, 28 degrees 3 days consecutively. So yeah, you're kind of half right. Yeah.
So I knew it's got to, there are some definitions of it, but it has been unbearably hot. Do not get me wrong. As an asthmatic, actually, when I've been out in it, I've actually found it really hard to draw breath sometimes. However, I'm very much looking forward to the cooler weather coming, and I'd just like to remind everybody that at the beginning of the month, I still have my scarf on, and today is probably the first time I've ever done this show with my hair up. So, you know, we are living in extremes of temperatures.
Can I, so not once in my kind of response to Alan did I say that school should close. If you listen back, I did not say that at all. And I totally agree with both you and Alan that children are better off in school from a safeguarding point of view. So let's just remind you, like, my expertise is in safeguarding and things like this. So let me just give people listening an example, and I think where Alan and Lucy will totally agree with this. So first of all, I don't have these rose-tinted glasses that all kids can go home to air condition. Actually, my research is all about the most vulnerable and those who are suffering the most from climate change, who do live in poorly insulated houses, low-income areas. So actually, I'm keenly aware, and I work with those children. So if I give you an example, if a school totally closing or totally staying open is not really, you know, is really, it can't work that way, to be honest. So what really has happened, and it's not Alan's fault or Rich's fault, they're doing the best they can to, and they will always look after their children, right? But the trouble is, as Rich said, you know, they're in poorly built schools that are not fit for today's climate, let alone tomorrow's climate. So let's just give an example. Let's say Alan decided to shut his school, right? But the trouble is with that, some of those kids are going to go back home and they're going to be going into hotter conditions. They might not be able to regulate themselves, so their behavior and could be, you know, even more dysregulated. They might even, if a child might be known to Alan, where if they go home, they might not be going to a safe environment because the heat will dysregulate the adult's behavior, and that can put them at risk. Yeah. So totally shutting schools is not even the answer, because you actually could be putting kids at greater risk. And every person who works in education has a duty of contextual safeguarding as well. And what that means is that you might not be able to directly control the child's circumstances, but you can do whatever you can to promote protective factors. And so that's where I totally agree with Alan and Lucy. It's all about giving these wonderful head teachers, you know, the tools and the funding to be able to do things in school which keep these kids cool, keeps them safe. And if they have to, and then give them the resources and the time to be able to identify the children who it will be too risky for them to go back to school. So if they have to out of school, so if they have to shut the school, like say, no, we know these kids we need to keep because we need to keep them safe. And as Alan said, we know that, you know, the families, the groups, the areas where they probably go home to air conditioning, they'll probably get our parents which will get on with their learning. Yep, they can do that. So we can move the kids we've got left into a cooler part of the school. And that is good safeguarding. So in that respect, Lucy and Alan, I totally 100% agree with you on that. So you can see, I've definitely known about the nuances of the issue because I can see the bigger picture.
I think the underlying problem is, though, with things like attendance and all the rest of it, is in young people's minds is they've got a choice whether they come to school. If it's too hot, they don't have to. If it's too cold, they don't have to. If they've got an upset tummy, they don't have to. It's all whereas I think we have to get back to those days where you just have to go to school, no matter what. And that is what resilience is. And of course, classrooms will be too hot. Of course, things will be difficult, but that's up for me and the rest of the staff to work through. But as long as young people in their heads think this is all a choice, and if it's a bit difficult, I don't have to go, then we're not going to sort this underlying problem out. We have to build resilience.
I spoke to sorry, Maud.
Thank you, Rich. I'm always wary of people who said that 50 years ago it was better, because remember that Roman writer was describing the youth behaving badly in the streets of Rome during the Roman Empire. I think we should stop looking back at the past with that golden age concept. What we need to do is look at scientific facts. It's not going to get better. So we need to have a clear set of rules so that everybody who's vulnerable, staff included, can I just say, some members of staff are vulnerable, physically or medically. So we need to have a set of rules that make everybody safe to attend school, and those who are more at risk outside school should definitely get a better wraparound care. I think we all agree on this. But let's not pretend that resilience is just sweating in a classroom and showing that we have a good work ethic. I think in this country, we confuse being in a room with being, having a good work ethics. In some countries, they stop school at 1 o'clock. In other countries, they have a big siesta time. We need to also change with the times we live in. So if it works better with a different timetable, we need to implement it. I'm very suspicious of leadership who always say, look, I wear a tie even if it's really hot, and I stop the aircon in my office because I want to show how to be resilient. This is things I've heard this week, from SLT. I think it's appalling. It's just showing that if you don't meet your own needs, you have a better work ethics. These people don't have a better work ethics. It's posturing. So I want more science in decision making. And I think we have had poor leadership this week, because I've had to send an email to my CEO to tell him, maybe we should consider putting something in place to make sure the staff is able to teach in the best conditions. And I'm just wondering, would you have just ignored the heat wave, completely not even thinking about it, if we hadn't sent a letter? So the decision shouldn't come from the staff. Leadership should have a plan. So I'm only asking, this is going to get the same or even worse every year. Kit explained it clearly using scientific data. So could we just have a government and a leadership who have a plan? Because I don't want to do the work of having to convince people to maybe let people go home earlier because the classrooms are too hot. It's not my job, and I shouldn't have to do it.
But I think, like I said before, in a school in Somerset where all of your kids are coming in on buses, to be able to entirely change, and don't forget those schools share buses, so we have staggered start times here because the bus companies operate for 2 different schools. So trying to change that, trying to get teenagers out of bed after they've had a hot sticky night in bed where they couldn't sleep to get into school for 7 o'clock, that's not our culture for just 2 or 3 days a week. I don't think that works. I do agree with building resilience. I do believe that. I do believe that there are so many people who have had no choice but to go to work today. We've had our gritter lorries out, apparently in Somerset, dusting the roads to try and stop them from melting. Those people have had to go to work. They've had to be out with their high-vis trousers and jackets on and things. And, so many people are working to keep us all going. And I just worry that as we feed back that message to children that if it's not comfortable for you, you don't have to do it, I just think it may come back to us in later years as a problem.
Yeah, well, Luce, that is absolutely true, but many people don't have a choice to go to work. But that really isn't the point, right? So the point is that employees still have duties to assess and manage, the heat as a hazard, and schools still have equivalent duties to keep children safe and well enough to learn. And that lack of choice does not remove duty of care. So, and again, let me reiterate, I'm not advocating to say that schools have to close. I'm advocating that they've got to have this duty of care. And the science is absolutely clear. I mean, we're already losing you know, about 7 days of learning because of the heat. And that's an average school. It's even worse in deprived schools. And that's a combination of, yes, school shutting and things like that, but it's also data. So this is from the Met Office and University College London. You know, where learning just isn't taking place, even though the kids might be in the school. You know, and this is only going up. This is only increasing. So once again, I mean, my role is about how do we build this resilience. So it's not counterintuitive or counterproductive to what either you or Alan are saying. In fact, quite the opposite. It's how can we build this resilience in our children, bearing in mind is that we are no longer in the world of the 1970s, 80s and 90s, you know, and our school systems aren't even fit for purpose today to deal with the changing world, let alone tomorrow.
Kit,
So
sorry,
we can't,
how
you know, we
how
can't just
would
keep
you
on with
say
this
to
one
build?
thing.
Sorry, how would
I
you
say,
say then to build the resilience?
Yeah, that is a very, very tricky question. So what really it's about, you know, trying to keep these kids in school, but making sure the school is a safe place to be, because resilience is not this stoic British stiff upper lip, let's just get on with it. It's about making sure that there are mechanisms of support around you. So if a child was having problems with their learning, they would get support, right? You won't just say, "Oh, suck it up, just get on with it." You know, if their child needs support with their handwriting, you don't tell them to just keep writing until they're risate. You know, you would do extra work with them, extra English, extra maths. So you can't make the same argument for those kids to say, well, we can't build resilience in these kids because they need this extra English and maths. So it's not the point of making them lazy kids or anything like that. It's about trying to build that kind of thing. It's like the world is changing, it is getting hotter. How are we going to change our behaviors? Because that's real resilience. How are we going to adjust the way we live? Because the UK isn't the same anymore. You know, what do we do to make sure our economy keeps running, that we still get our roads gritted, that we still get the dustbins emptied, because all these are very important jobs in the heat and stuff like that. It's about being a bit more sensible, you know, learning to drink more water, that to stay in the shade, to make sure that your buildings are cooled down enough. So that's where we start building resilience. And then, of course, there's the structural things that need to happen in schools, which the schools aren't getting funding for, right? So that's like having a better shading, you know, having passive and cool lift systems. And the new school builds that are going up at the moment don't cool themselves properly. They're built for the winter, which doesn't hardly exist anymore. So I don't envy the job that Alan and Rich has got at all. They've got a very, very tough job trying to look after their children and give them a quality education at the same time.
So just to go back to the point there that you've raised there, Kit. So I'm going through balance sheets on a daily basis right now as we speak, and Alan will be the same as me. And the points you've made, Kit and Lucy and Maud, are absolutely bang on. The issue we've got here going forward is we've got buildings that are 100 years old, that haven't got aircon, that weren't built for the 2020s. We've got buildings that are designed to keep the heat in. We've got windows that don't open. There's no aircon. So the big worry I've got sat here going forward is how on earth do we create buildings that are fit for purpose in the current climate that we're in now, where me and Alan will be getting plagued to death about cutting a cover bill when we took it, and that'll be our first port of call will be to cut that cover bill or things such as that. And we're talking about buildings that really are possibly 50, 60, 70 years out of date.
You've got a tough job, you two, and I don't envy you.
And I just, if I lose the train of thought on what I was saying before, I had a phone call with the head teacher today, not from my city, but another part of the north, who was absolutely obsessed about the school being open when it wasn't safe for the stakeholders, and including that staff, who we need to think about as much as anybody, as well as the cost of the kids, saying if I shut, the coding will mean that from an Ofsted point of view, the attendance figures won't be affected. We're talking about nonsense like that. That's the world that people like myself and Alan are living in, that these kind of conversations take place when they're absolutely ridiculous. When the first port of call has got to be the safety of the kids and the staff, but then conversations take place because of the world that we live in. So that's another side to the job that we're doing on a day-to-day basis.
Could I just say, right, I haven't said much yet, but Alan and Kit and Lucy as well, I guess, in the sort of three of you. One of the things Kit said was, I think something like the UK is not the same as it was. And when it comes to this, and I agree with that. Whereas I see, and Alan and Lucy, I guess this is sort of a semi-challenge to you guys is, I mean, I agree with what Kit said. Whereas I sometimes feel like some of the narratives that I hear are sort of not really acknowledging that things have changed. It's almost like it was like this in 1975. It's the same now. Are you guys saying it's the same now? Because I don't think this is the same now. I think it's visible. It's clear.
I would flip that around. So that was the point I was going to make. I think Maud's made the point that, we can't keep harking back to 1976. Totally agree. It's not 1976. But if you look at the research for Gen Z and Gen Alpha, they're miserable. So maybe we can learn from 1976. So instead of saying,
as well.
so instead of saying, 1976, dismiss that. Let's have a look what was going on in 1976. Can we learn from them? Let's stop being so arrogant about we've got it all sorted. Let's go back and see what it was like back then and learn from them. And from all the things I've listened to the last 10 minutes, it's all ideals. So of course, I agree with everything that gets said about what things should be like. Of course, I agree more about the science. Of course, I do. But the reality is, you're in a situation, and it's not ideals, and you have to make decisions and compromises and decisions, and that is where. And I totally agree. Resilience isn't get on with it. The most resilient word you can say is help me. But asking for help is resilient, right? But resilience is too hot. I'm staying at home. I can't be bothered. That's not resilient. Resilient is I'm going to come to school. It's going to be hot in my classroom. I'm going to get on with it. And yes, it isn't scientifically perfect. It isn't as it should be, but I'm going to get on with it. And I can learn from 1976 because do you know what? Back then, they might have things to tell us.
It's my favorite decade, the 70s, music-wise, politically. Let's go back to the 1970s. You could have one man working in a family, and you could have a house, and you could have children going to university. University fees didn't exist in the 70s. I want to go back to that, actually. I think
nobody went to university.
Yes, a lot of people started going to university. And also, let's just think, young people are suffering from mental health crisis in not just in the UK, everywhere. But there's a reason why. They're not treated well. They have high unemployment rate. Look at the graduates coming out on the job market right now. They have AI. They have lots of difficult, complicated international, things happening to them that will affect their employment rate. This is not an easy time. I feel sorry for my pupils. But we also need to make decisions to protect our people, our young people. And this is also about voting. If we keep voting for governments who don't give budgets for schools to build properly. You mentioned, Rich, old buildings. I just told you my new building, brand new.
I get it. I get it.
For purpose.
Yeah.
So
scandalous. Absolutely scandalous.
We are never going to win the day, right? We're never going to win the day as long as we keep saying, it's the government's fault. It's this fault. We have to own it. We have to play the cards we're dealt.
Totally agree.
Until we
agree.
People, we're not going to win the day. It's everybody else's fault. Get on with it.
Schools do have to get on with it. You're absolutely right. But can I just remind everybody? I mean, because we're conflating about other things, about resilience and general laziness, work ethic. Let's just stick to the topic of the issue, which is the heat. Right, that's what we're talking about. The public health guidance now says that a red heat alert means risk to even healthy people. Right, and the Department for Education's own advice is that schools must take practical steps to keep children safe and comfortable in those conditions. So getting on with it means doing the adapting, but not dismissing the risk, and certainly not romanticizing 1976 about how the whole British culture was back then.
But I think going back to your point, Kit, the key words there is the guidance at the moment. Let's take that with a pinch of salt in it. Come on.
It's
Maud, you're muted.
Alan, you said to me earlier that you said to me earlier, Alan, that you didn't believe quite a bit of that. I said, all I did was just gave you the science and expressed it from an ex-teacher's point of view and someone who's trained in versed in safeguarding. So
there was mention of
to come to your side here, but
there was mention of rose-tinted glasses. I don't think it has any rose-tinted view of the climate crisis. And
I
I think
suffer
young
from
people,
eco-climate anxiety every day.
yeah, I mean, and young people are really, really worried, really anxious about climate change because they see it, they feel it. So can we stop saying that scientific data is, ideological? It's not. And
But
the
dare
heat
I-
wave in Europe is happening.
No
Maybe
one
in
has
the
said
UK
that.
you
No
have
one-
an
no one has said
experience.
that.
Well, I don't know if you mentioned rose-tinted glasses. You're kind of undermining kids' data, and we can't lie with that sort of data. Now, my question is, what do we do now to make sure it's safe for my colleague who's pregnant to go to school tomorrow, and for my student actually who have difficult medical conditions? Because at the moment, if the classroom is at 30 degrees, kid is saying it's unsafe, and yet we're told to go to school and teach and pretend everything's okay. I don't want to be, I'm condoning this situation, and I don't want to be responsible. I think it's wrong. If we don't protect staff and pupils, we're doing something wrong.
Lucy.
So can I just say, because actually you've reminded me of something. So I had my daughter in September 2006, and that I told her for a very long time that she took all the summers away. It was quite mean, because after she was born, that summer was so hot. It was unbelievable. Every day was hot. Maybe it wasn't a heat wave, I don't know, but every day was hot. And I was really heavily pregnant, and I was working in primary education at the time. And we made changes. I didn't go on the Isambard Kingdom Brunel trip to Bristol because I just didn't think that I could do that. And so we did make reasonable adjustments. But I did go into work. And actually, after that year, we had years and years of dismal summers until about 5 or so years ago when it got better. But so I think you can make adjustments for people that need the help. And I think if you have a vulnerable member of staff who's really very vulnerable, then that member of staff should be allowed, and it should be condoned that that member of staff doesn't come in, and that's where you have to scrape your budgets and find someone to cover those lessons. So I do think that you can make adjustments within it, but the whole premise of this discussion is whether children can go to school in these kind of temperatures, and whether teachers should be made to teach. And we've talked about the fact that lots and lots of people have no choice but to go to work. Doctors and nurses are in hospitals. Hospitals are like very, very hot places, particularly if you're working with the elderly or people who are very poorly. So they're not places where you've got air conditioning unless you work in theatre. And so I do think that we have to prepare children for that. It's maybe resilience is the word that we use, and that sort of annoys people, but we do have to prepare children for adult life where you don't always get to make choices because you're not comfortable. And I think that's the thing. And just about, because I was asked, because I'm one of the old people on here, about the 70s. I know, Tom.
What?
I know you did. No, I am. I'm
It wasn't me
53
hitting
soon,
quotas
so
on
I'm
there,
getting
Lucy.
there.
Oh,
No.
Lucy.
But
You're not.
born in 73, so I lived through 76, and but what I was going to say is, although you're right, we can't keep parking back and that things have changed, people haven't changed. Do you know, I was saying to the lady I met in the coffee shop today, when we were kids, I remember we used to sleep in the garden on our clicky beds when it was really hot weather. So we definitely had heat waves. It was really exciting. And
Lucy,
I think,
the
Alan,
heat
I love
waves
the
are
idea that you
different. These
got
are different.
the
The
ice cream
weather's
vans
changed. It's
in,
not.
and that they had water fights and things, because it was
The
fun.
humidity is different. The level of humidity is different. We've got
Lucy, it's not the
tropical
same.
humidity coming in. It's not like it was when I was a
not
kid.
The same?
Up till the
Tom,
last
I can't
2
hear
years.
you. I don't know why.
Oh, can anyone hear me?
It's
I don't
me.
know.
Yeah, I can hear you,
I was
Tom,
saying
yeah.
up till the
it's
last
just
2
me.
years, I
My
never
sound goes
experienced
funny.
that humidity that I've experienced when I've been in the UK. We just haven't had that level of humidity. And I don't mean heat,
Yeah.
I mean humidity. I mean when
Yeah,
you
you've
can
made a
feel it
great
in
point
the
there,
air and you're
Tom.
walking around, it's invasive. That
What we
did
need to
not
be
used
paying
to
more
happen.
attention
We might
to,
have had
Tom.
hot
Yeah.
weather.
Is something called the wet bulb temperature. The wet bulb temperature is actually more important than the heat, because it's the humidity which actually prevents us or our bodies from cooling down. And Lucy, I just want to ask you a question, really. It's a very simple question. I thank you for saying that. You said you were heavily pregnant, you didn't go on trips, you made reasonable adjustments. And then you said, and I totally agree with you, you need to look after the staff who've got those medical conditions or conditions, which means the workplace is not suitable for them. You need to make adjustments for them. Totally agree with you. Are you therefore saying, just for clarity, I'm not putting words here, I just want clarity. Are you therefore saying that should not apply to the kids? They should come to school regardless. Oh, Tom, you're muted.
Oh, Lucy might not be able to hear you because I think she might be having some
okay.
technical issues.
Yeah.
But,
no, I just want to make sure
we'll,
she clarifies rather than people assume what she meant. That's all.
Yeah, we can come back to it.
Okay.
Alan, did you want to come back in on something because you were about to, and then I don't know.
I think we've got to stop telling ourselves it's different today, right? We say teenagers different today. If you read what Aristotle in 400 BC said about teenagers, he described them like they are today. And yes, the heat might have been a bit different 50 years ago, but it's still heat. Come on. And we seem to be giving this generation excuses for not being resilient.
Sorry, you're mansplaining a climate scientist now. I'm sorry.
Well, okay, but you are coming across as an expert in things I don't get it, mate. All right, I'm just saying that we keep giving young people excuses for things, and that's why we're in them. We'd all agree, I'm sure, this country's in a bit of a mess. We have to ask why, and I think we're in a mess because we keep giving them excuses. We keep giving them reasons for the way they're behaving. We keep giving them scientific. It's not right.
No, this country is a mess
we keep giving them. So we're giving them we're basing things on facts, research, climates, all this kind of thing on science. It's not excuses. It's trying to explain what the behaviours are taking place and why. That's not excuses.
Is it helping?
Right? So,
are your scientific facts helping?
Well, no, because there's bad management.
Really because no one like yourself believes in it, Alan.
I'm asking you a question. Are they making things better?
Because we just do the job of telling people the truth.
Okay,
right?
Answer the question. Are they making things better? Are your facts making things better?
No, because of the attitude of people like yourself, Alan, is not taking it on board, and you are not getting the support to make the changes to make sure that you give your kids the high quality education and the safety that they deserve, that they deserve.
Right.
I don't know. I sort of agree though with what Alan was saying about the issue of resilience in general. The bit where I agree with Maud and Kit is sometimes there is a downplaying of the climate crisis. I feel that's only my personal point of view. However, in general, I do agree with what Alan is saying about the resilience. I'll give something to back Alan up. Is obviously in Spain, they've got 40-degree heat. There's no school closures. They're still going to school. And actually in the south of Spain, as an example, it's always been the case that temperatures have been 35 degrees during the summer months. And that's just the way it's always been. And their buildings are also Victorian or 1960s, 70s, 80s buildings. And this idea, I think you mentioned it, Maud, of siestas, etc. I mean, that's pretty old hat now. I mean, times have changed. I think a lot of, the schools and working environments in a country like Spain have changed now in the sense that, there's not like a 2.5 hour lunch. They've adapted more to UK style timetables. So, so the bit in terms of they should, stay in schools, I get it. But I would say though that, what is this? Because I would say though, there should be a safety level. There has to be a safety level. Yeah. You can't just say if the temperatures carry on going up and up. Now you could have that threshold really high. I've got no objection to that. Have it high, but there has to be a level, doesn't there, Alan? That was the bit where I was like going to ask you, what is the level then? Because we've had teachers send to Teachers Talk Radio just this week, thermometers of 42 degrees in the classroom. Yeah. So if you're on a 42, there has to come a point where you go, that isn't, I mean, even just forget about the word, like, yeah, I think safety, that's part of it, but also it's just not. But I do understand what you're saying in terms of if you send them home, what are they going to do at home as well? Do you know what I mean? They might be in 42 degrees at home. So I don't know. One thing I would say is, Tom? Yeah, go on, Lucy.
In my my classroom, so I don't work in education anymore, but when I did, my classroom, we couldn't put the blinds down because the kids had trashed the blinds. And those kinds of things are very, very frustrating. Some of the window handles, they'd been locked by the kids and then the keys were snapped off in them. Those kind of problems don't help. And I know, Maud, you said about, children are really worried about the climate crisis, but in many ways, they very often don't show that through their actions. We've only got to see,
Agree with that as well.
kids sort of, asking to be given lifts to places just down the road, and the kinds of things that we're told that we should do, have heating on less, put on a jumper in the house, they just go straight to the heating. So I think sometimes our actions don't necessarily match our words.
There's research about eco-anxiety and how it manifests in children, and I strongly recommend you look up the work of Caroline Hickman with regards to that stuff. And it's children are very emotionally salient about this, and they either exhibit the behaviours or in certain different ways. So we can't equate those two things. And yeah, as for like the destruction of the blinds and the stuff like that, well, that school obviously has an issue that they need to deal with, which is separate to the heat.
Yeah, Tom, you got your point there, Tom, you raised before about Spain. Is that to do with mindset and culture? Is that to do with mindset and culture?
I don't know, if I'm honest, Rich, but I would imagine part of it is because the temperatures, for example, in the south of Spain have always been pretty high in the spring and summer and sort of early autumn months. Obviously, they've increased now.
Yeah.
To what I'm saying is their temperatures that the UK has had now have been the temperatures in the south of Spain probably for the last however many decades. Yeah, and that's what. Now, obviously, they've gone up even in Spain. I mean, Spain are at 40 degrees. Like in the south now, they've gone up even from where they were. But what I'm saying is that was the normal level there, and they adapted to that level, and they all went to school. So that's sort of supporting this idea that we shouldn't close and we need to. However, my only point was, and this was agreeing with you earlier, Rich, is that has to be. And this is where I don't know what Alan is saying on this. It's where the threshold is of temperature where you say that's enough is enough.
So I would
what would you say the threshold is, Alan? You ask me a question. Now I'll ask you a question. What is the threshold where it becomes unacceptable, where you have to make adjustments in the school?
Fine, I'll give you the answer now. I'm happily to give you the answer. I think the temperature is a temperature, whether it's at school or at home. So today, for example, right, our children have been in school all day. They have, and it's, in some classrooms, it's reached 39 degrees. We haven't said, stay there, keep work. What we said is this: come outside, go in the shade. We've had an ice cream van. We've had lollipops. We've had water. I've been splashed with water all day. We've had fun, right? My point is...
That's brilliant. That's exactly what we should be doing. Yep.
We've been in school. So they would have been in those temperatures at home. But what we're doing is they've been in school, learning.
So, yeah, which is what I said earlier. Yep.
So my point,
Kit, earlier. Yep.
So my point is, Kit, right? My point is this. I mean this really strongly. I said to my deputy head just before I came on tonight, I think the children and the staff who've been in school for the last 2 days, and our attendance has only been about 60%, let's be honest, right? They will look back in their 7-year school career and say they were the happiest 2 days they've ever had in school, because they were in class, they did some learning, they had lollipops, they had tip-tops, they had ice creams, they had water fights, they had fun. But we were looking after them, and they were in school knowing that attendance is important, life goes on, and it's resilience, period.
And I wish more schools would take that example, Tom, because I've heard plenty of schools which have been really rigid. So no, you're still going to lessons. We're not collapsing the timetable. And so what Alan's just described there is a perfect example of how schools can still get these kids in there and, keep them safe, but also have fun, because one way of, dealing with this issue is to keep them happy and keep them say, look, we can adjust, we can adapt. And this is one good way of building resilience.
Yes, I'm hoping tomorrow's headline is head teacher from hell turns into Mr. Softy, yeah?
Alan,
why would that be the headline? You've just lived up to head teacher from hell. Why would that be the headline? Rich, I genuinely thought a minute ago you put a cigar in your mouth, but it was actually a pencil.
No, it's my pen. I'm going to raise a point here. We've got mocks this week for year 10s. So our school's been easy this week because there's no year 11s, so there's more room around the school. Certain rooms have got aircon, not all rooms have. So the school's been easy to navigate, and same for you, Alan, because not all the classrooms are full. We've had mocks this week for year 10s. This is that mindset. I'll give you an example here. And our attendance is 90 to 91. It's not as been higher this week because some families will vote with their feet as they would. But our attendance this week for year 10 is around about 94, 95%, even in these conditions on a year group who are about 89, 90. What do we put that down to? What do we put that down to? The fact that attendance this week, in this week of all weeks, on a mocks, on sun, on heat, that figures up at around about 95, 96%. Because I couldn't believe it. I thought this week, when I looked at that, I thought we are in for a really difficult week here in terms, I thought, been saying it's down at 70, 75%. Is that communication? Is that stakeholders? Is that parents?
No, I think it's fun. I think it's because it's an event and the kids want to be involved in an event. They want to be there when this is going on. They want to see all the ice lollies that the head teacher from hell is giving out to them. And they want to see, you know, the tooth fairies come and is, you know, oh, Mr. Ebenezer, give us more ice lollies. They want to be in for that event, seriously. However, I was surprised by the figure of 1,500 schools closing. That is a lot of schools. So
it's remarkable.
Say again?
It's a remarkable figure.
So I'm asking, is that because, so, you know, is that because I think maybe everybody here is sort of saying that, you know, schools shouldn't be closing. Even the people who are saying they should be closing are saying they should be closing if they're hitting a certain level, right, of difficulty. Okay. So I think the 1,500 number is quite high. That suggests, Alan, that, and you know, that, are we saying that all of those 1,500 school leaders don't think like you? Because I would suggest that a lot of them do think like you, and they had no option but to close. Yeah,
So
not all of those 1,500 can be sort of.
That's about 5% of schools. Yeah, that's about 5% of schools in England.
It's still a lot. It's still too many. I would argue that, and I made this point. I was on the radio yesterday. I made this point. Everyone has to talk about their own context. I can only talk about in my own context, right? If I'm a primary school and I've got terrapins in the middle of the yard and it's scorching hot and I got 6-year-olds, I get it. I'm not making a blanket statement, right? I also think, if I'm honest, if I'd shut my school for the last 2 days, I'd have had 100% attendance. Some people have gained it. My attendance today and yesterday was 55%, 60%. It's not great. But I think you've got to do the right thing.
Can I put in there as well, just to say that is a great point, Alan. And some head teachers will look at that and they said, we're living in a very difficult world of attendance. In the post-COVID world, the biggest difference we've got in education, maybe resilience, but it's probably attendance. And the fact that we've made it, schools, I'm not saying it's optional. The whole culture around attendance has massively changed in the last 6 years. And weeks like this reinforce that point. What I'd say to Kit is, and just ask the question, is what damage to the profession has this
massively
week done? Because that there's a big thing here for us. Is I sit there and listen. No one ever wants to shut a school, and the repercussions and the ramifications of doing that act are huge. But back to you then, Lucy. What's the damage to the profession if we're shutting the school because of heat? I know it's red. I get it. I'm all that. But to the general public and the stakeholders and the non-teachers, what's the damage to the profession?
Is
sorry, was that to me or Lucy?
Yeah, well, either or. I'm asking. It's a question.
You take it because I think Rich asked you.
Yeah,
I've lost some sound, so I'm going and coming back. Sound.
Go on, Kit, answer it.
Yeah, I think really it's not really. It's just exposing the damage that's already been there. Really, the fact that there's just been, you know, decades of underfunding, under resourcing, you know, teachers not getting what they need, schools which aren't fit for purpose, building schools for, as I say, not even for today's climate, for tomorrow's climate, and it's, you know, of course, that we've also got to bear in mind is that there could also be a damage to profession for not taking a public health alert seriously. You know, we've got to also think of it from that point of view as well. So we've got to be careful that we don't want to cause damage, you know, when professional judgment is replaced by bravado. And I'm not saying that any of that has been on display here.
But do you know, like parents have made their decisions. So if you look at it, somebody said,
well, Alan, I
wasn't
talking about you, but you have a reflection on your face like you thought it was directed towards you. So.
Can you hear me?
But anyway, just to finish my point, so if the
Yes,
DFA
Lucy, we can.
Okay.
Yeah, the DFE actually say that schools should stay open where it's safe to do so, and I agree with that. That's that people. I think you need to keep forgetting that I'm actually advocating for schools to stay open if it's safe for students to be there. And in fact, if it's the safest place for them to be, totally 100% agree.
But what's
with them.
your level
And-
kit of safety? That's, I suppose, because we asked that to Alan. What's your temperature gauge level where you say that's unsafe?
Well, surely it should be the NHS.
Well, hang on, let's let Kit answer it more. Just first.
Well, it's and I think you said it a bit earlier, Tom. It's where you get humidity becomes so high that the body stops regulating its temperature. Yeah. And I don't have the figures exactly in my head, but if you don't have to have high ambient air temperatures, if you've got very high humidities, you could still have some suffering. And that, if we start having kids passing out, being sick, that's going to cause more of a professional damage and things like that. And it's only that the probability of that happening is unfortunately getting worse. And Alan's done a great job to keep his kids happy, safe and cool, which is exactly what schools need to do. But Alan shouldn't be put in a position where he needs to keep getting that in place. He should be given the support and to actually have a cool school where they can be all around the site. All learning takes place where they're not overheating. But people like Alan and Rich are just not getting the support on for that.
Just very quickly before we continue the conversation, just a big shout out to our partners on the show, Hachette Learning. They're publishers of professional development books and resources. You can check them out at the Hachette Learning website. Do head over there. Massive supporters of Teachers Talk Radio and teachers around the world. So massive thank you from us for supporting us at TTR. Huge shout out to our viewers and listeners. We've had quite a lot of comments across Facebook and YouTube. Sorry we haven't had a chance to get to them all. We might come back to some of them as we move forward with the show. We've actually got more panelists joining us. So I'm going to give everybody here the option because you've done your hours shift. Do you know what I mean? So if you need to go, guys, feel free to go because we've got more panelists queued up ready to come on and share their views on this mega crisis. So shall we call it a mega crisis? Is it? I mean,
no.
Alan, I feel like you got
Tom.
Maud's shaking her head as well. Mega crisis?
No.
It's not a crisis. It's just a bit hot, isn't it? And I like Kit, by the way. I like you, Kit. All right. But my point is that I get the damage to our profession, but I also think that by closing our schools, we're damaging our profession because we are preparing. We are preparing.
6 weeks holiday, they'll all say. 6 weeks holiday, they couldn't work because it was hot.
But isn't that their problem rather than the profession's problem? If there's a safety issue at play?
We are preparing young people for life.
How many teachers got seriously ill during COVID because schools remained open? How many teachers passed away directly because of that decision?
Tom, we are preparing young people.
I'm just asking a question.
Right, I don't know the answer to that, but I know the answer to this, right? We are preparing the young people for life. Well, we are preparing young people for life and the world of work. The world of work is carrying on, and we are saying, let's close our schools. It's a bit hot. Of course,
which world of work? Because I have friends who work in companies and offices, and they were all at home. So it's also, we have this vision that we are all going to be working in schools. A lot of people have very different jobs. I'm sorry. So adults can do home working. This is the new generation, Of course, all my thoughts go to people who have to work in hospitality and NHS. I was thinking of people working in pizza restaurants. They have a very tough time. And I'm hoping they also have a leader at work who provides them with all the water and all the cooling they can have and more breaks and stuff like that. But my problem in this current educational system is that it's all on the head teacher's decision making. And I know a few head teachers who don't always make decisions that are informed by pupil well-being and staff well-being. And that's too much power into one set of hands. And I would like governmental guidelines that protect staff from overbearing, sometimes at times, leadership. And we haven't mentioned this because the buildings that we had built, these corporate symbols of power with glass that look like the banking sector, they were decided by SLT. No one considered having environmental guidelines. Whereas we've heard for the last 40 years that we need to adapt, We need to make our cities. We need to plant trees. We need to paint, ceilings or roofs white so that it reflects. All these things are known by scientists, but we have inertia and lots of people refuse to listen because they have a vision and an ideology, and they're against change.
I'm going to go. Can I ask one question? So you would rather trust the government to decide whether Caldecott schools should close than me? Is that what you're saying?
I want governmental guidelines, and I want the NHS to set them, not school leaders, because we don't have medical knowledge. I'm sorry.
But so you're honestly saying you'd rather the government decide to close my school than me, who's on the ground? You'd rather that?
I'd rather information have medical NHS guidelines so that we can make the best decision for health conditions and for, making sure that nobody has heat
But when
strokes.
I made my decisions, I had all that information. I based it on all that decision. But you're saying to me, if I got you right, the government should make a unilateral decision.
Alan, just to say though, if there's some creationist in the United States, in the south of the United States, who the flood is going to come tomorrow, so I'm closing my school, so you should trust me because I'm the head teacher and I'm going to close my school because the end times are coming tomorrow, would you then support that head teacher then?
Because he made his own decision?
No,
I'm not saying you're that, but I'm saying if we're just going to delegate to head teachers, I mean, some of them can be,
Well, but that's the point, isn't it? So if you of course you can have people who are going to make bad decisions. Of course you are.
Yeah. So couldn't you make a bad decision?
You can't then say we're not going to give anyone the right to make decisions because we've got some people who are going to make bad decisions. That's not the way we run things.
I'm sorry, I didn't say that. I said I want clear guidelines led by science and medicine.
I want to also put in there common sense.
Yeah. Well, that depends on your ideology as well, common sense. Because if it's the common sense from the 1970s,
well, the world has changed so much. The common sense of old is not the common sense of today.
No,
I want 1976 common sense.
Yeah. As a head teacher, Alan, you're damned if you do and damned if you don't. You can't win in any situation there.
Listen, I'm going to bow.
I just want to. I know Alan and Kit have got to go, so thank you very much, both of you.
Thanks so much, Alan. It was lovely
your contributions. See you later.
Nice to meet you.
You take care.
Okay, that was Alan. Kit, we're now going to bring in, hopefully. Oh, and somebody else has gone.
Tom, I've lost your sound.
Well, Lucy, you're having all sorts of problems. It's not me, I promise. I'm going to bring in everybody else. Try to. Liz, JP, and Alistair. Welcome.
Hi, Liz. Hi, JP.
Hello.
Hi, Alistair.
So, yeah, you've probably heard some of that really interesting stuff in terms of, everything. So we're going to sort of just carry on the conversation. I just want to say thanks everybody for tuning in across Facebook and YouTube and X as well. So if you've got a comment to make, we'll try. Should we go through some of the comments quickly while we're sort of in this little changeover moment?
That 1976 was halcyon days.
We'll come back to that, JP. I knew you'd love that. We'll come back to that in a minute. So we've had quite a few comments on YouTube and Facebook. Paul said, we stay open all week. I'm fine with it. We have many children being kept off, but none of them will be fined or questioned. Parents were able to make the choice.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Yeah. Emma said optionality can be problematic, but preparation is also key. Drix decided that the podcast should have ended about an hour ago because they said children go to school, senior leadership ensure the vulnerable are catered for, podcast over. Drix, we really appreciate that. Thank you. We went for an hour and 7 minutes more when you made the comment. So thank you. And you're probably not watching anymore anyway, based on that. Bye. Who else commented? We've got Nicola who said, no, it's not the same. 1976 was a one-off. We're now seeing this every year. Lucy, I completely agree with that. I know you're not going to agree with that.
It wasn't a one-off because I don't remember sleeping in the garden in 1976.
So you're suggesting that all these
humidity,
all these major climate, like this. Are you trying to trigger me?
Do you know what
I'd take Brexit to do that?
But you know
that does as well. Right. But this one does, and I think I'm perfectly reasonable on this. Listen,
I'm going to
this
say
isn't
something.
something. Wait a second, JP. This isn't something that you like can't see. It's something people can see and feel and experience right now. And I know it's. Listen, we've got the scientists who I think as a consensus would back me up on this. I think. But this is just my personal view. When I was a kid and you saw flies splattering on windscreens when you drove down the motorway, or when you went out to school in a November, December, January, February in Birkenhead, and it was Baltic. And I don't mean Baltic like it is now at 11 degrees in December, when you've got Christmas Day and it's like, let's have a barbecue outside. You know, that was like White Christmas Days, 1995. The whole climate ecosystem has changed, and it has changed significantly. And these mini heat waves, these mini moments that the UK, I wasn't alive in 1976. You were, Lucy, so you have that personal experience. But I would be surprised to think that tropical humidity that the UK is currently experiencing, that was reserved for places nearer to the equator, would be something that was normal prior to the last 5 to 10 years, where it's really started to kick on.
But Tom, I said earlier, so 2006, summer that I spent heavily pregnant, hot for weeks and weeks and weeks. It was really hot. Literally the day I went into hospital to have my daughter was the day it stopped. And we didn't have another hot summer for years after that. If you think back to the beginning of this month, and you can look back at footage of me on Talk Radio, still on Teachers Talk Radio, still with my scarf on, because it was cold. Even in my house, it was cold. And
Thank
so
you, Lucy.
I think
Lucy, thank you for proving that climate change
No,
exists.
it does. Yes. No,
There you go.
JP, if you thought I was going to say climate change isn't a thing, I studied climate modules for my OU degree. So I do know about it. And the climate is changing at the moment. There's no two ways about it. And it is different from how it used to be.
Yeah.
And we did used
That's
to have
all I was
mild
getting
days
at.
in winter. No, I don't deny it. I'm not a climate change denier, but I am saying that doesn't mean, I don't see how, until we're able to say that essential workers, hospitals, until we have people who are driving our trains, driving our buses, people on the tube today driving those trains, 38-degree heat in the tubes, and at the end of the day, until we have a situation where nobody ever has to go to work if it doesn't feel comfortable for them, then we have to prepare children for a life where they may have to go to work. I said earlier, my daughter has gone to work today in a kitchen. She said it's 39 degrees, but she's got to work because there'll be customers coming in saying it's too hot in my kitchen to cook, so we'll go out to dinner today. So at the end of the day, we do have to prepare people.
No, but children don't choose. Your daughter chooses to work in that environment.
Yeah.
We inflict that environment on children. That's the difference.
And also they're children. Your daughter is above 18.
And the regulation of temperature. Now, one thing not discussed is the parts per million. What we learned during COVID, I mean, in this country, absolutely nothing, just like what we learned about Brexit, what we learned about NHS. I am sick and tired of the constant moaning. I hear 1976 every year, but it wasn't like this in 1976. Like you said, in 2002, when the temperatures hit 40 degrees. 2002. Remember that? See, I'm starting to remember that because I look at the data, I look at the evidence, and the evidence is we have an unpredictable climate. The evidence is now that we need to adjust our psychology, our society, our petrochemical dependency, our industrial economy, because our economy is glued in. And this idea of we're training children for the future, that's what education started out with. It started out with training kids so they could work in factories. And then we train them a little bit more so they can work in more factories. Our school education system is still run by factories. In fact, our buildings still look like factories and are set up like factories. I was doing a piece of Industrial Revolution recently about Arkwright's Mill in Manchester, and I was using Peggy the Pauper, a 7-year-old working in a factory. Well, all of those people used to be the factory workers saying, we're doing you a favor, kids, we're preparing you for life, while you're bow-legged, while your head's chopped off, and all that. We used to chip kids down mines at 5 years old. Is that what made this country great? Exploitation of destruction of people like that? Great. If you want the economy over that, I heard this argument during COVID. And what really shocked me was that people put the economy before people, but they put money before people. And the same goes for schools, because this national efficiency, schools need to be open so parents go to work. But now parents don't go to work because they work from home, but we're still sending kids into school. We need to come up with a better system. And schools need to be resilient. I agree. And we need to be resilient. I agree. Because here's the thing about human beings. Human beings adapt. We need to adapt. Our children do need to adapt. But so do our adults. And this idea of it wasn't like that in 1976 is the kind of blinkered, ignorant thinking that's got us into the mess in the first place, with mess when it comes to the economy, mess when it comes to the future, mess when it comes to AI. We need to evolve and adapt. And those naysayers out there saying this Darwinian approach let me finish. The Darwinian approach of whacking kids into a classroom, which is unfit for purpose, and adults into a classroom, which is unfit for purpose, and then saying, toughen up buttercups, is not exactly in keeping with the science nor the psychology of what we now know. In 1976, I'd been in the back of a car with no seatbelt, my dad smoking a cigarette. Was that good? I'm going home to being probably beaten for strapped, or then go to school and being caned. So any of those people who want to say those halcyon days in 1976 were so fantastic, and their education when they walk 65 miles, through the snow and in the wintertime, and there's no such thing as climate change, it's just called the weather. They really need to get a perspective in exactly what has been better in the world, but also how we need to constantly evolve and adapt. And what this week proves is there's a group of people in our society that don't want to adapt, don't want to change, and just want to go on as if nothing's ever, things have got worse. And all it is our fault, those people who actually look at evidence. Because this is the most unbelievable thing. I am a school teacher teaching about the psychology of everything about climate change. And yet I have people out there saying we're in denial of it. So what am I going to teach the kids? Yeah, I need them to adapt. I needed to show them that they need to be resilient, but I'm also teaching about climate change while climate change is actually happening to them. Which is unreal, isn't it? We're literally looking at the very thing we're teaching. If you want a case study, hi kids, let's teach about climate change. Hello, let's look at the fact that today is the warmest June in record. And twice in a row. It's literally straight in front of our faces. And then turn around to those children and said, we're not going to make any changes here.
But to be fair, JP, there could be the counter argument to say during the Blitz, the kids were in school as normal.
No, they were evacuated. 900,000 kids.
Oh, yeah, well, somewhere, but schools were still open in London, and
yeah, but
they were doing it.
Here comes your bingo card. Schools are open in Northern Ireland during the Troubles, mate. You want to talk about resilient? You're looking at resilient here. You look at a child who grew up in it. So I don't want to hear that nonsense.
Maud doesn't know about the bingo card. JP, no. Alistair doesn't understand the bingo card. Do you want to tell him what it is?
Our windows came through.
Do you want to tell them what the bingo card is, JP? So they know.
The bingo card is what I bring up apparently.
And do you want to tell them the keywords on the bingo card so they can tick them
there's
off
the occupation of Ireland by British forces for 865 years. We'll have that one in there. What else will I have in there? We'll have the Troubles. Well, because let's be honest.
Working class.
1976. How much terrorism was in this country? How much
working
terrorism?
Class?
How much terrorism is there now? And yet people don't celebrate that. See, we're all stuck in halcyon sort of rose-tinted glasses days where the world's got a certain way. We're fearful of more stuff. We're publicizing more stuff. So those people who were talking about 1976 didn't know how bad it was because people did die in 1976, but it wasn't plastered across the media. Perceptions got worse. And it's given people this false perception of the past and the present. It's skewed perceptions. Because, yeah, in 1976, we had don't get into a car with strangers, don't talk to strangers. We had so many ridiculous type of organizations who were doing what they want, corruption everywhere. And people say that the world was so much better back then and just suck it up and get on with it. I tell you what, those people were the type of people that would have said, those children down the mines, it's going to make them nice and tough. Oh, yeah, that's what they need. Stiff upper lip.
Right, Jodie, we're going to go on, Lucy.
Well, I just don't think that's fair to say that. I wouldn't be a proponent for returning to most of the things from the 70s. And all I've said, I don't even remember what I said about 1976 now, to be fair. However, it was a thing. It happened. It was hot. I don't even remember it because I was only 3 at the time. So I personally don't remember 1976. But I do remember the summer of 2006. I do remember other summers when I was a child. And it felt like my memories of summer were always really, really hot days. My thing about not closing schools isn't born from some sort of industrial revolution style, make the children suffer. Actually, I just think of the kids who are at home, have been left at home today by parents, because there are parents who still have to go to jobs. There are still lots of jobs that you have to go to do. And those children, what? Am I on mute?
No, you're not.
No.
I was only gonna interrupt. And I don't know why I'm interrupting you, because JP always gets like 60% more time than everyone else. But I was going to make quite an amusing comment, which is I have brought Alistair on, Lucy, because I feel like he's going to agree with you when you said that you would never go on strike as a teacher. Alistair?
Yeah, so I'm obviously from Adapt, and we an organisation that supports teachers, but we can't call for strikes. But actually, interestingly, a lot of our members do go on strike. They will join strikes when they come on. I think, where we always founded the organisation was just giving people a choice about that support and protection. I don't want to turn this into a adapt sales pitch, but yeah, we always founded it on the basis that you shouldn't necessarily have to join a campaigning organisation in order to feel protected in the classroom. And I think that's kind of where we've kind of sat with it over the years. And then, but we've got a really broad church of people, like bit like today, we will have lots of people within the profession, as we've seen today, around discussions around this issue. People have a really diverse viewpoint of.
I was half joking with that. I was just trying to spice it up.
And I was trying not to turn it into.
What's your view, Alistair, on this whole issue of the heat wave, the reaction to it from sort of on social media? There's been huge reaction. I've seen Nick Ferrari having a pop at teachers, saying it's the snowflake generation. I've seen other commentators actually saying that.
Was he saying that while he was in an air-conditioned office at LBC? I'd love to put him in my classroom today, see how much further red he gets.
We've also had lots of sort of reaction on Facebook as well, along the lines of, schools shouldn't close. I'm actually of the view that, I don't think, unless it's extreme heat, extreme problems with safety, I don't think schools should close unless it is hitting a very high threshold. However, when it hits that threshold, there should be no negotiation and schools should be closed, right? So that's my position on it. And I think that in 2020, schools did hit that threshold and were not closed, and that cost people lives, right? So that's where I'm saying there is a threshold, and that should be very high, right? But it should exist. It shouldn't just be, we need to get on with it, whatever happens. There has to be limitations when it comes to schools. Sorry, Alistair, go on.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, I mean, it's interesting because I think most schools and head teachers will operate from the position of, look, let's keep the school open if we can keep everyone safe. And I think what's really interesting when we look at schools, and this is, I think, the challenging thing for people trying to approach, which is, relatively nuanced in places. We know different schools are very different situations and how heat works in that space. So even within the same school, you can have classrooms which are wildly different in temperature. You've also got children, and across the kind of whole range of the ages we teach, is keeping young children safe is a lot harder than keeping older children safe. The ones who can regulate themselves through water and all sorts of things. Like if you've got a smaller kind of A-level class of students, like that's a lot easier to keep that those people safe than it is a much larger class of 30 primary school kids. So there's lots of, I think, nuance within that, which is an interesting one to think about. But I think most, from what I've seen today in terms of conversations we've had with people who have rang up and been concerned about stuff, I think most head teachers have approached it pretty pragmatically. Like, I don't think, I'd be really surprised if there's a head teacher out there who is trying to force through a totally normal day and not deviating from kind of the normal plan, because it's just not realistic. Like, in terms of leading a school, your kind of political capital within your staff by being completely heartless, that's not worth it. I think the other bit, head teachers also ultimately responsible for the health and safety of people. And actually, I think a lot of people go quite conservative on that. Like, lots of people are concerned about the what they might be accused of or putting people in danger. That people actually, if we look at like safeguarding as a concept, I think there's an argument here around safeguarding in general, that we are really trying really, really hard with safeguarding, to the point where I think some people start to argue that we almost go OTT with safeguarding stuff. And I think schools take that responsibility
Alistair, your very existence is evidence that there are trusts and organizations out there who would do such things. Your whole organization exists to sit between unions, because unions are swamped at the moment because there's such terrible practices. So with all due respect, we don't have good employers any longer. We've been semi-privatized as an industry, and we have now got unbelievably cruel and heartless, almost Victorian-esque organizations who would, we've seen this week reports where they're forcing, male members of staff to be suited and booted, which they can go and shove the man shackle where the sun don't shine. If you ask me, they don't wear it in Parliament, they don't know why they're wearing it in schools. It's disgraceful. But your whole organization is between the cracks between things. So no, schools or organizations will sometimes literally say this is our policy, and some teachers will have to suffer it because the organization will pretty much say this is our policy across this trust, and you're all going into school and end of the discussion should you raise your hand. So and one of the subtle differences between, say, you and unions is unions can campaign on a large thing to say minimum temperature. Do you think there should be a minimum temperature in schools? Would adapt push for that?
I think no, because we don't lobby on things. That's not how we work, right? But I think the key bit on that, the challenge with having a minimum temperature, like I know you guys have had discussions around humidity and things like that. It's just like the actual practical implementation of an absolute limit makes things really difficult. And I think it takes away some of the autonomy and other allowances that you can do to try and. But I would. Personally, it's about trying to have professional trust, right? In terms of people who are making these decisions, often not making them independently. It's often as a team. When you're making key health and safety decisions, it's usually a team decision because everyone's got to be comfortable agreeing to it. If you're asking people to do stuff which is challenging, you've got to be on board with that.
But some teachers they don't ask.
I'm not saying asking it. What I'm saying is I'm not saying asking everyone, right? I'm just saying it's a team conversation. I'm talking within the senior leadership
team might be a dictatorial version of team in some organizations and schools.
Yeah, but someone's got to take the decision, right? And you can't run a school by.
Why, JP? Why are you saying that? Why are you sort of framing that? And this is a genuine question. It's actually open-ended. It's not one side or the other. But why are you framing that as a union?
We don't get asked.
You said you're in the middle or something.
We don't get asked. We don't get consulted. We're expendable. Told you during COVID. Send them back in.
But what's that got to do with Alistair then?
What's got to do with Alistair is the fact that we don't trust the majority of schools now who don't have leadership, which is benevolent in kind and in a kind of patronage kind of way. They have their objectives, and they will enforce that, and they have their rules, and they will enforce that, and they will turn around and they will dictate to staff. And if staff don't like that, there's usually a "well, go somewhere else" philosophy. So that's the way some schools have operated. So we teachers get it in the press, because we get the press saying, "Oh, these soft teachers," as if we are autonomous about this. We go into work, and our workplace is unhealthy and unsafe. What are we going to do about it? We can refuse to work and then most likely lose our job. Or we can turn around and say, complain about it to the press, but then we'll have people going, "Oh, you teachers, I work in a cab," like that, and go, "Well, I had 2,000 parts per million in CO2 today. When I look up what 2,000 parts per million CO2 says, it says extremely dangerous, liable to fall asleep. And I've got kids falling asleep in my lesson. And I'm going like, "Kids, come on, let's do some work." And I'm going, actually, who am I to tell them to do some work? They're practically going to fall asleep because my classroom is just like soup. But what am I going to do about that? Complain to the management. What can they do about that? Complain to the government. They haven't put air conditioning in. They haven't put any health and safety. They put no change since COVID in there. So we just have to take the hits from parents, take the hits from the kids. We are literally getting melting in the classroom with no support whatsoever. And should some of us turn around and say, complain to management, well, then what's that going to do? Do they really care about us? Let's be clear and honest with this. Are we really loved and cared about as a profession? And a lot of the vitriol you're getting now, even the Nick Ferrari and all the rest of it, is basically along the lines of teacher bashing. And that's the guilt thing that really upsets me the most, is get in the classroom and suffer your health. I don't care if you've got CPOED. I don't care if you've got asthma and you're a teacher. Get in. And that's exactly the pattern of behavior we saw during COVID. We don't care that you can get COVID and die. But hey, the kids don't get it. That's okay. The kids don't get it. But hey, you lot, well, fine. That's the same mentality of the soldiers in the front line of the First World War. Sorry. That's how I feel as a teacher at the moment.
Liz, Maud, I'll bring you in after. It's only because Liz has just joined and she always has to wait about 18,000 minutes to speak when she's
I just wanted to kind of pick up on all of the things that are said there. One of the things, and I don't know if this was mentioned earlier in the show, that has massively changed about modern schools is social media. and how publicly things are discussed, which in 1976 wouldn't have been the case. And so many decisions now are made for an aesthetic or PR purpose rather than for what it looks like. And so the discussions that have been happening, there have been so many comparisons. Well, what are other schools doing in the local area? Because I can't not be in line with what they're doing, because if I close and they don't close, I'm going to look really bad if I do that. So it's really, really difficult. Like,
it's like the old snow days, isn't it?
It is. It's really, really difficult. And so I really do feel for it. So when Maud was saying earlier, I heard
sorry,
that
Lucy,
bit,
go on.
When Maud was saying having a central decision, I really feel like that would have saved so many heads so much stress of having to make those individualized decisions, because that's what led people to hesitate. That's what led to last minute decisions. That's what led to people having to change their minds. And actually, that's been more of an inconvenience to working parents than making the decisions in advance. I don't think any of us would disagree with the idea of keeping schools open if we had mitigations in place in order to make it a more less hostile environment, which is what it is. It's so I mean, I actually thought I might hurt someone yesterday. Like, obviously I'm being hyperbolic, but at 2 o'clock yesterday, when the temperature in my classroom was 35 and I had 30 very ratty, horrible students who were just going at each other, not keeping the volume down, not being able to get enough water, sweating, like it was such a difficult time. And nobody, I know Alan was talking earlier about it being the best day of their lives. I can guarantee that those kids will not remember fondly that 45 minutes that they spent in that very hot classroom. It was unpleasant for everyone. Nobody learned anything. Everyone was really hot. Everyone was really angry. It was horrendous. And it's actually living within it is so difficult. I get it. I do think schools should stay open. I do know it's safe spaces for lots of kids. I understand all of those concepts. And I'm massively pro resilience. I think we should be resilient. However, there are limits to everything. And I think cramming people into a 15-foot square room that has minimal ventilation and no ability to cool it is not the point at which we're using the resilience cards, I think.
Can I really quickly, before Maud, just butt in and just say head teachers are paid a hell of a lot of money to make those difficult decisions.
We could make it easier for them, though. It doesn't have to be wildly difficult. I get that some are on six figures, and I do get that. I have felt, particularly for head teachers this week. I thought
you were going to say you were on a six-figure salary, Liz.
I wish. Not even close.
Yeah, but I think coming back to it though, that was an interesting one what Alan was saying, because I come back to my example I gave. If we're just going to base it on individuals because they're paid a lot, well, I hate to mention the big man in the White House, but there's some people on a lot of money who struggle to make decisions, but that well, it's my opinion.
But when you get it wrong, you answer to it, don't you? He'll be voted out.
Do you?
Well, yeah, you do. Head teachers, when Ofsted come
do academy CEOs who make poor decisions, do they have any accountability for that?
No, they don't.
I don't know.
Do they?
I don't know.
I still think some of them get bonuses for it. Some of them get bonuses.
They don't get any. There is no system, when someone is doing, unless they do something criminal.
I'll tell you what they do get. They are accountable for results. Yeah. So they're accountable for the results.
Are they though? We've had 20 years of academies. Are the results improved?
To a point. But what they're not accountable for are the sort of necessarily the staff cultures in their organizations, or those
and
sort of
retention, staff retention.
Well, this is what I'm saying. I think they are accountable to a point for the wrong thing, by the way, which is, my views are well documented on this in terms of linking teacher efficacy to student performance. But but ultimately they are linked in that way, and that is how they are judged ultimately. Right? Is our academy trust is on this on the league tables, and yours is on this. Right. But yeah, Lucy, my point was more, I get what you're saying in an ideal world of giving autonomy to professionals in different contexts. I get that, and I'm with you on that. However, when it comes to like sort of national issues of health and safety, or defense, or whatever those major issues are, I think there needs to be more science and more of an evidence-informed approach towards that, rather than individuals who have particular beliefs or ideological bends in terms of making decisions.
But this is where
Can I
Maud
just
was right.
step in? Sorry, JP. By the way, I agreed with everything you said, and that was so refreshing. It's just a shame you couldn't meet Alan, because
Oh no, we've met before. It was
you've met before.
It was
Okay.
fireworks.
But I personally, I agree with a heck of a lot of what Alan said. I
agree to some of it as well, to be fair.
I agree with a lot of what he said.
He cares about the children. Yes, but I think he cares about the children. But the problem is we have too much power in hands with no accountability. And someone at one point said, "Oh, but how would we make decisions?" And I was thinking maybe the senior leadership team should have said, "We have looked at the weather forecast. We want to know your opinion on the issue." And then a survey, right, to ask the staff, do you think it's safe to keep the school open this week? Delegate decision-making if it's tough. Ask the teachers to be part of it. We even come sometimes in a holiday.
I remember. Wait a minute. I remember, and I got shouted at by my head teacher for this
democracy
at the
is
time.
important, and democratic
wait.
principles work, because
wait
always.
a minute.
I'm just gonna explain my point, because
go for it.
The head teachers have. I mean, we all know how difficult it is headship, and I would never do that job, even for £1 million. So that I respect the position. Now, I think too many people do that job because they also like to control. And this is not a good leadership style. And I'm suffering from this. I have many colleagues who are leaving every term because of micromanagement and poor decision-making as well. So I would like to have more accountability. And I think we have teachers who come on a Saturday morning. We have teachers who stay after their last teaching hour to do more intervention to help pupils. Unpaid hours.
That's their choice, though, yeah?
Yes. And this is because they're dedicated professional. So the fact that we think we're being lazy and we just want to, not be at school on a hot day, I think it's deeply
It's not about
wrong.
being lazy, but ultimately more than this is why I disagree with you on that. I would consider myself professional. I'd consider myself pretty, dedicated and all the rest of it. But in 2009-10, I specifically remember snow was forecast. And I worked in a nice school with a nice head teacher, nice staff body. It was challenging. It was a challenging school, and it was tough, and I was knackered. And I was checking that forecast for 3 or 4 days prior. Every single day, I was spending an hour on that forecast every day, hoping I was going to get a day off. I don't care. Come at me. I don't care. Right? I was like, I'm knackered. I'm tired. I was like, I'm knackered. I'm absolutely knackered. This wasn't me saying we should have a day off. This was me saying, checking the forecast and going, if it's decided we get a day off, then fantastic, because I'm knackered, and that's great. So coming out with all this, if people voted whether they wanted to go into work or not, they'd all vote to go in.
That
Can I
is
just say
so
as
far
well-
from what I was saying.
But I think the reality is, if you put something like that to a vote,
Go on, Alistair. Go on.
you'll get a split vote, right? And then you've still got
Yeah,
to
you
make
get
a
a
decision.
split vote, but
right?
a lot of people would vote for a day off. I'm sorry. they
No,
would
I
vote
mean,
for-
I'm sorry. It's not just because we feel like it. It's because we know our classrooms are going to be too hot. If, I'm at university today, I'm in a building with aircon. I would never say, oh, I'm not going to teach today because it's a bit hot. Of course not, because I have access to facilities. We always go back to this. There's poor management because the facilities aren't fit for purpose. And it's not just on a hot day, by the way. Sometimes I don't even have enough tables and chairs in my classroom. And it's so squeezed in because, lack of budget, lack of everything. So I would just want, the government, the school leadership.
No, and I agree
I'm
with
sorry.
Maud.
I just
No.
want a building that's fit for purpose.
And that's the elephant in the room. Because here is the missed opportunity, and this is the political system. This is our
Exactly.
economics. I fought against HS2. That's £100 billion. They want to build
Bingo
some
card.
nukes. Yeah, you can bingo card it all you want, but where was the rest of the country? I am sick and tired of waste. They want to build more nukes to attack the Russians.
Bingo
Go
card
ahead.
nukes.
No, exactly.
Bingo card
But it's
nukes.
true.
I am
But
one
what do
away
they
from
do?
a line.
Yeah, keep going. Because here's the problem. What's the priority of education? They would rather we suffer, which we shouldn't, in the sixth wealthiest economy in the world, a country which prides itself on its innovation and all the rest of it, probably invented air conditioning, probably invented schools, probably invented a lot of things.
No, we did invent schools. It was in Morocco.
Was it in Morocco? Well,
yeah,
probably Socrates invented
Sorry.
School. Well, modern schooling for the industrial age. I'm sure they probably did, because everything else invented.
The Romans had school.
But the thing is, we're missing the breadcrumbs on the table. This is the breadcrumbs we're fighting over. We're fighting over semantics. We should have an education system which has best facilities in the world. Was this called Great Britain, or was this called Average Britain? I don't know. Am I missing something here as an Irishman looking in? There's your bingo card again.
Lucy.
It's pathetic. This country is pathetic.
But JP, do you know, I have to say, right, the reason we are looking at this at the moment is because it is so unusual to have these temperatures in June. There's no guarantee that this will be repeated every year now. If we get these hot temperatures, it's mostly in the summer holidays. Are you saying we need to invest billions and billions of pounds in air conditioning in
Let me look at the economics of that.
for a few days?
Yes, absolutely.
You can't deny that climate change is happening. Please.
I'm not denying it.
You
I'm
just said it's
saying,
just a couple of days.
Do you know those flood defenses that you have close to your house? Don't bother building them, because you're only going to need them for a couple of days. But just in case it happens, we'll get those flood defenses for all the nice houses, because I'm sure all the posh schools today aren't sitting having this debate, are they? Eton's not having this problem. The royal family's not going to be sitting in this issue, are they?
I don't see an equivalence there to that.
I do.
Because,
the rest of us little plebs have to go into a classroom full of what, with holes in the roof. I have ventilation in my roof.
JP, let Lucy speak.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. I know. I can see that this is a subject of real passion for you. It's not massively, I have struggled today with the hot weather. I've found it very hard. I don't have air conditioning in my house. I do have the luxury of effectively working from home. I went out and did a site visit, though, in a very, very dry dust bowl of a place today to visit somebody. That was really very hot, and then I walked home again, and and so I have had some hard work to do today in the hot weather. But at the end of the day, I just think that sometimes I totally understand where you're coming from, but you have to look at it's like the cost benefits analysis. If we find that we are consistently getting those hot days like we do in the winter, which is why we have radiators in school, for example, or heating systems of some sort or another, then the money has to be made available. But right now, there isn't money there, for, like Maud said, for tables and chairs, for some of the most, for the teachers and the teaching assistants and things.
I get that,
And
Lucy.
so
There is money,
point,
Lucy. There is money. Because my CEO is paid £250,000 a year. There is so much money in this country. I live in London. I see very expensive cars. I see houses worth £2.3 million everywhere. The problem is we have a society that doesn't want to share, okay? And it's a choice. So let's not pretend. Some countries spend way more on education.
Oh, no,
I have
that's
family
far
in
too
Denmark.
socialist. This is too much French socialism getting
I'm
in
sorry.
here.
I'm sorry. And also, France is not better. We have horrible state of education at the moment.
Fair
It's
point,
not better in France. In Denmark, it's pretty good. Why? Because they pay high taxes. My father-in-law paid 75% of his income in taxes. But then, what a lifestyle. The children go to school and then they don't pay for university. They even get money to go to university. We have the society we vote for. And I think I hear a lot of ideology. I have my own ideology, as you can hear. But in the previous call, there was this idea that people just need to stay in their place. If they have poor conditions, they need to suck it up. This is the way it is. Stiff upper lip. In the 1970s, the children were hot. They will be hot in the future. I'm sorry. As you said, JP, private school students don't have the same life conditions They have aircon, they have beautiful, they have green spaces
Not
outside.
necessarily. Not necessarily.
A
That's not
lot.
the case. Listen. I'm state school through and through, educated, worked in, sent my children through. So I'm I'm not sort of attached to the private school system. But actually, a lot of private schools, when you actually see what they're like, I've got one near me that's been closed down for quite a while. That I've been to look at with the council to look at ideas for repurposing, and the place that I haven't got air conditioning, I can tell you. So I don't think I don't think we can assume that everything is better.
No, you're right.
I do think,
but they don't have
I do think
32
the
kids in a
difference
class. They don't have 35 kids in a class.
That's fair. Yeah. Yeah, that's
because
true.
so many comments have been well, there was the guy on LBC, not Nick Ferrari, somebody else, sounding off about it, who was saying, well, take them out in the shade. And I'm like, there are 1,700 kids in some schools. Where is all this shade that you're putting them in? Whereas in a private school, where you've got so many children that might not
have gone.
Alistair, welcome to Points of View. If you don't know what the format is,
just get in there, Alistair.
It's essentially you have to interrupt people and stand your ground if you want to speak. There's no other way you're going to speak.
No, I mean, the thing that I was just thinking of, like going through it, is like, I think what you sort of captured is as a former economics teacher, opportunity cost, right? There are trade-offs for all these decisions, and this is why these decisions, JP, you're talking at a macro level there, like the micro level for head teachers this week is the trade-off, right? Do I keep the school open? Do I close it? Do I close it early? Do I close it for the whole day? Do I have some year groups in? Do I have other year groups out? And so they've got to, and I think this idea of, I think it's difficult to make a decision on something like that, which will suit everyone. And I think there's a bit there where, it goes back to kind of classic economic theory. You make better decisions when you've got more information. So the more perfect your information, the better decisions in theory, right, you can make, right? And so this is where the idea that one hopes that your senior leadership team uses all the information they've got available to them. Granted, some of that could come from government in terms of advice and some scientific stuff, which would be useful, right? But ultimately, they've got to make the decision based on what they know about their kids, what they know about their staff. Like amongst your staff body, you're going to have a diverse group of people who will be able to cope with the heat in very different ways. Some staff will be pregnant, right? You need to treat them differently in this situation. Same with kids, right? I talked about kind of like younger kids versus older kids. And so there's lots of like these micro decisions. So to try and have like we should have shut all the schools this week, probably wouldn't have, there's a trade-off to that. Like for all those schools that shut, that didn't probably need to shut because actually they've got the aircon because for some reason they're a lot luckier and they've had the right investment. So it's really difficult, I think, to make those kind of blanket decisions, even on a local authority level, like let alone a national level. So, there's no perfect solution to this. I think my sort of opinion on from what I've seen this week and how different schools have coped with it is it might not be it might be the perfect way, but giving autonomy to head teachers and their leadership teams to make that decision is probably the best way of dealing with it. Don't get me wrong, JP, there's questions there about, is the school, infrastructure, prepared for these sorts of events, and if this is going to be happening more regularly, there's a question there about what needs to happen. But I think in terms of dealing with what's happening this week, and I think the other thing is it was foreseeable, right? So like we knew the heat wave was coming. There's a lot that can be done in terms of that mitigation that you might not be able to do for other things.
But the overall point I want to make is this just keeps happening. If a COVID pandemic happened again, nothing's been learned. No infrastructure, no air filters, nothing. It's like basically 300,000 people died and they have not learned a single thing. We've had an inquiry. What did we learn about teaching then? We're expendable. So here we are again suffering another. And next year, and I've taught 23, 24 years, and I've always had classrooms to deal with. And we've always had this issue. It's like exam halls. We have children examined in June, May and June in exam hall. What a stupid time to give kids terminal exams. Never thought that one through. But that's where somebody sits down and goes, let's plan this out and let's change this, because doing the same thing over and over again is insanity. So yes, this pattern is there now. And really, what happens after today? Because next week next week we'll be moving on to, look, there's some more boats over there. Oh, look, there's a crisis in 10 Downing Street. Oh, look, Larry, the cat's in Prime Minister now. I mean, seriously, the collective consciousness of this country is not able to hold information for longer than 5 seconds. Because then it'll come back this time next year, you'll hear 1976, and we'll hear, oh my God, what are you going to do about schools? And we'll go, it's happened again. And then the focus will be on us, another debate, and then nothing gets resolved, no plan, no money. And then it'll be worse. And then it just keeps, it's just the same thing over and over again. And we go, is anybody going to sit down and go, all right, what's the plan for schools? What's resilience plan for schools? How are we going to work with this? What money have we got to put aside to do this? Okay, air conditioning, we cannot do air conditioning, but you know what? Every single schools in the country have. Plant more trees. Let's do some shade. Let's do some low-cost activities. You know, let's do some, I think Alan said about common sense. Let's do some common sense. Let's get water fountains. I had an example this week. This is so classically British. This is unbelievable. So the Trust ordered us, our great and glorious Trust ordered us new water fountains. Except that the water fountains they sent were warm, hot, and scalding water. It's great for canteens. So we've got them sitting in reception right now, and we've got people outside with just water jugs, just handing out water jugs, and you're like going, is this absolute? How many schools out there have not got windows that open, that have not even the basics? I mean, literally basics. I mean, you have these people who are online going like, oh, the workplace, but I work in this. But they have mitigation. They can wear trousers. They are not coping with the absolute ridiculous state of our school estates building. And yet, sure, you complain, you get shut up and told, well, you know, you snowflakes, what about the holidays? And that's what's really annoying me is, I get it, this may be a one-off, but it's not. But what changes after all is, even what changes after this conversation, it's just the same thing over and over again.
But it's the framing of it in the media as well, isn't it? There was a show that went with the banner along the bottom was "Are teachers lazy?" And it's this sort of rhetoric which is unhelpful because, like you were saying earlier, JP, it's not down to us. We don't make these decisions.
Nope.
We don't make the decisions about whether parents are fined for whether their children are at school or not. But everything is always leveled at us when we actually make none of the decisions. And so we get absolutely slaughtered in the media. Like, and even like Tom was saying, you know, when you're praying for a day off, I've prayed for snow days off. I'm not going to lie. Of course I have.
Oh, thank you, Liz.
Our department calls it a snowvina.
Human nature.
But I pray for those days off because I'm like, oh my God, I can do 6 hours of getting on top of work. Like that's the psychology behind it. It's like, oh my gosh, I can get on top of some admin, so that's not laziness.
Yeah.
That's just it's almost opportunist. It's like,
That means
it's
the same. It's exactly that for me. I was shattered.
I
had reports to do, whatever it was, and I'm thinking I could get that done if I had that day off to do it, and I wouldn't have to use whatever time to do it. But it was the one time I did get, not in trouble, but my head teacher was not happy with me because I still distinctly remember, and he was a great guy, got on really well with him, worked in the school for 5 years, but that day he was not happy with me because he come over to I taught in a porter cabin, so there was one of those ramps coming up to my classroom. And he was walking around the school early, 7:30, 7:45, and I went, someone could slip on that, and he was not happy with me. Because I was like, oh, maybe we should go home because it's health and safety hazard. He was not happy. I remember that. But yeah, Maud, what you'll have to realize, Maud, is you can put your hand up for an hour with JP here, and you'll still have your hand
but
up.
I'm using teacher language there. You know? I think the problem is that we always use an assumption that senior leadership team has been trained to deal with these situations and that they have the interest of the children and the staff at heart. And I could list so many, recorded events where it's not there. I think as much as we said that being a head teacher is really difficult, there's too many people with no accountability, with too much power, and this could easily be balanced. We need more processes where we have teacher autonomy and teacher agency in the balance. I think we could improve.
The bit I don't get though is more you're contradictory in a way though, because you've said that head teachers should have less autonomy to make decisions over health, but you said that teachers should have more autonomy to be democratic in decisions that they make.
Yes, we need to rebalance.
Isn't there a contradiction there though?
No, because we are in the front line. Like Wednesday, I was in a classroom. The children was telling me, Miss, I can't stand the heat. It's too much. And I was like, yeah, I know, I'm sorry. The head teacher comes in, he opens the door, he's like, oh, it's okay. It's not too hot here. And then he left. And that's the attitude we face. People who want to go somewhere and then they want to confirm their original decision. Yeah, that's not good leadership. And
I agree with that to a point, yeah. And that was funny, so well done.
I mean, seriously, the kids couldn't believe it. We were all like, what on earth? So yeah, it's a problem. And the fact that the structure is too hierarchical.
But I would argue that,
yeah, go on,
Alistair. My sense, I've seen enough bad leadership, and in the cases that we've supported. So I'm not saying, but my sense is that the majority are making good decisions this week. The majority are trying to find ways to mitigate and make life easier for staff.
Well, I hope so.
Like I just can't.
He's on mute.
No, but Maud, I don't even think to say like you hope so. Like I think like that is it, right?
Well, if it was so well structured in schools at the moment, we would have more teacher retention. I'm a rep. So I see people crying, people leaving, people telling me I can't stand it anymore. So if you tell me leadership is not that bad, why do you have so many cases of teachers leaving the profession? They're not even changing school. They're leaving the profession. I would
argue retention's a super complex issue that is leadership's a part of and how schools are led, but there are loads of other factors within
yes,
that.
And I would say, if you said about the government maybe should be making decisions about schools closing, which is fine if you like the government that's in it.
No. I didn't say the government, the politician. I said the NHS, which is professional, medically trained people. Remember JP, you mentioned the pandemic, right? By the way, New Zealand is an island and they didn't have so many victims because
that's because they had to send the Arden, not some clown called Boris.
He was
partying 14. There's no party going on here. No party at all. What's that, a birthday cake? You poke the surface, you get a clown.
It's a different style of leadership. It's accountable.
Yeah, actual leadership. I know. Imagine actually having one.
And scientifically driven. And this is what we need in the government and in the NHS and in schools. And we need a change of leadership model. I see too many people who are rigid and they do not listen.
What care?
Are we all, Alistair and Lucy, your faces both seem quite disturbed by what our sort of demonic Renaissance painter is saying. Because if you look at his camera right now with his head up like that and the dark cloud around him, he does look quite, demonic. But what was it that you found demonic about what he was saying, Alistair and Lucy? Should we go to Alistair first?
I think
leadership. Did you not like what he said about Boris Johnson?
No.
No, I didn't.
I think
which was the bits you disagreed with then?
No, I think the idea of school leaders have to lead schools, like people have to make the decisions. You can't run a school by democracy completely. It's just not practical to do that.
And I think that's where me and Maud are going to differ. There are democratic schools. I've visited some. There are democratic schools in Denmark, in Finland, in France. It's just a different model. Can we stop saying it doesn't exist when it actually exists, please?
Democratic in Estonia and Finland, which are far ahead of Britain.
Let's not pretend there's only one way of organizing things, because then we'll
never has to still make a decision, though, Maud. No. So if I'm in a democratic school, and I'm being bullied by other members of staff in that school, who do I go to make a decision to help me?
You go to the
union.
No,
they're not in the school. I'm saying in the school itself.
There's a school council, and everybody's discussing the issue.
But what if the bullies are in the school council?
They'll be addressed in that council, and they will be transparent about it.
But what if the council is made up of 5 and 3 of the bullies?
There's research papers done on democratic principles in education. I will send them to you. It's just not what I'm.
I think it could work if you had better workplace conditions in where it felt like more of a level playing field. But I think in this country where there's a lot of dissatisfaction.
I've taught in schools I can think of one specifically where it was like the Wild Wild West. Anybody could say anything to anyone on a staff level and get away with it. Anybody could do anything they wanted to do on a staff level and get away with it because there was an absence.
Send you the literature. Let's not
Ted Downing
pretend
Street.
it's an opening for abuse. It's not what democratic schools are about. We can do a show about it, but let's
do you
read
know
about
what?
it.
Right, I've worked
Someone's
in
got to make
education.
decisions, though. You still need a leader.
I've worked in education and I work in politics now. So I work in a democratic organisation in a council, and it's not all perfect there either. Just because a few people put their hands up doesn't mean the right decisions are made. And I think, you know, that there has to be some accountability for somebody. Somebody who is being paid the big salary needs to make the decisions. And even in a democracy or in a democratic organisation where votes are held for everything, decisions still have to be taken ultimately by a single person. And I think what you were saying is that you would like someone like Chris Whitty or Sir Chris Whitty or I don't know what his title is, but you would like people like him to to make the decision whether all the schools in all of the country get closed or not. But we need to remember
No, that's not what I said, Lucy. I said we needed clear guidelines. For instance, we should all have a humidity and temperature measure in every school. And once it reaches a certain level, once it's red and it beeps, then it means this is unsafe. And then we should change school. Change classroom. In each classroom, yes.
But you know, I just think I get where you're coming from.
I mean, that's not revolutionary.
I do get where
I'm
you're
just
coming
asking
from.
to have data and then to apply a clear guideline, and then everybody would know what to do.
But data has been supplied. Data and information and warnings and advice have been
Well,
given.
there's no thermometer in my classroom. I don't know what. I can't tell if it was 40 or 30. I don't have this information because it's not considered important enough. So we don't invest in that.
I've got a thermometer here in my study right now. I've been doing this for over 2 hours now. 29.8, and I'm very happy to show you is 29.8 because I'd just like to point out to everybody. Okay, it's back to front, but there it is. But I want to point out to everybody here that Somerset was the place where the highest temperature was reached today. Somerset here, where I am. So I've been in here working. I had work to do. I couldn't go, well, I'm at home and I don't, you know, it's hot, so I can't. So just being at home doesn't mean you're not doing anything. Being in school is hard. I'm not saying that it's not hard when it's hot weather, and I have worked in hot classrooms, you know, but I just think the idea that somebody else, I think that schools should be accountable for their own decisions. And so schools up in Scotland where it hasn't had a heat wave, in parts of the northeast where it's been perfectly pleasantly warm but not the unbearable conditions in other parts of the country. Tomorrow I think the southwest, I think we're due to be cooler down here, but other parts of the southeast are still going to be really, really hot. I believe they may be having their hotter temperatures tomorrow. And so at the end of the day, that autonomy for schools to decide for themselves, you know, do you know what? I don't think we have the capacity. Primary schools are going to have more problems in secondary because we're a whole year group down in secondary education. If you've got a sixth form, you're 2 year groups out. So there is more space to move around and to move.
I think one of the things that's starting to upset me is the pullback, removal, and the pushback on rights. I'm a worker, I have rights. Those children have rights. And this country is starting to regress. Let's be clear. I think it was one of the reasons for Brexit was basically, and we saw it during COVID, they did the most ridiculous thing during COVID. They give me air monitors. A lot of us in teaching now are still got those monitors. That's why you can see what's going on in classrooms. They give us CO2 monitors and they give us air monitors, which is the equivalent of giving you a fire detector but no way to put out the fire. Welcome to Britain. Germany, 2-3 months into the COVID crisis, made sure that every single one of their classrooms was retrofitted with clean air filters. Even New York, even America did it. What was Britain's solution? Open a window. Oh, yes, tally-ho, chap, you shall open a window. We're British, we're fine. Tally-ho, go, stiff up a lip. Oh, what are you complaining about, kids? We've opened the windows. And we had a situation during the winter, of course, where it was put on some gloves and put on some duffel coats and stuff on the lip. I mean, seriously, these last couple of years is like living through Blackadder season 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Really, it is. We're literally a Monty Python sketch. We're turning into a comedy sketch. Everything about the whole country, even this whole argument. Fix the damn problem. You know the schools are overheating. Go and invent something. Christ of Almighty, this country put practically every invention in the world on the map. Can we not sit down and go, get designers? God, we designed bridges. You designed, if Brunel was alive today, put the Brunels of the worst world to task with making our schools habitable. And the rest we've
had all these new buildings built. I put it in our like private chat earlier, and that with these ambient temperature machines, you know, we don't need air conditioning. We've got these ambient air machines, which do not work. So we've got these aesthetically beautiful glass buildings.
Who got the
that
backhanded
look
contract for
absolutely
that one
lovely.
then? Who got the backhanded contract?
The architect who designed the building at the school that I last worked at and the school that I currently work at, she got an award for her designs of these buildings, which are not fit for purpose. They're not. In the last school I worked at, the
but
floor
as
was
Lucy
so
said, Liz,
slippery.
maybe it's just a few hot days and it's just what, you know.
But it's freezing cold in the winter and it's boiling hot in the summer. And these ambient air machines are supposed to make sure that no matter what the climate, the temperature in the classroom is supposed to be kept at an ambient temperature, because they store the cold air under the building overnight and then they filter that into the classrooms. That has never happened. The machines have never worked. It was reported to the council because the council were the ones who gave the money for these buildings to be built. The council said, oh, well, you should have brought it up in the snagging process. So it's not really our problem anymore.
No accountability.
No, everyone's just going, not my fault, not my fault all the time. And millions of pounds have been spent on these buildings when they're not fit for purpose.
At least you didn't have cladding. Yeah, you didn't have cladding on top of it, because that's another crisis. British-made crisis. But I mean, seriously,
would need to be another show, because we're hitting
it's
on.
Okay, it's okay. They give us concrete that's ventilated, except it's got lots of air bubbles in it. But hey, like, it's ventilated concrete, isn't it? Really?
Well, in France at uni, we had asbestos, and teachers died over.
Yeah, we do.
UCU University.
55% of my school building.
You can't make this up, literally. On that note, I think it's getting late, isn't it? I need to go.
Guys, thank you ever so much for joining us. We've had a lot of viewers.
I was going to say, the key question here, Tom, is that as the leader, you've made the decision to make everyone work this evening.
Yeah, 2 hours I've put in tonight.
Someone's got to do it, mate. Someone's got to make a decision. But in future, I'm going to adopt Maud's approach, where we have like a series of votes, and then we eliminate each person from the vote each time. So then we end up with a panel of just me, which will make things way easier. Because
that's the Hunger Games. I'm not in favor of that.
No, it's democratic, Maud. You should be.
Not if there's elimination.
No, we're not going to have a leader anymore. We're not going to have any decisions anymore. It's going to be like anarchy for us. It's going to be brilliant. It's whoever can, we're going to have, it's a gladiator. We're going to have contests involving like proper gladiator contests. That will determine who is going to be on points of view for each episode. Whoever wins those fights, survival of the fittest. It's democratic.
No, it's not.
All right, guys.
Right. Take care, everyone.
Thank you ever so much for joining us tonight. It was a lot of fun. And we'll be back again. We now have a Monday night point of view. So it's new. All right. New team, new guys. Well, some old, but some new. And it's every Monday night. So you now get a point of view every Monday night, Thursday night, and Sunday morning. So we'll see you on Sunday morning for the next one of these. You've got more shows to look forward to tomorrow as well, and over the weekend. So take care, everybody. And a big thanks as well, of course, to Hachette Learning. Thank you, Hachette Learning, our amazing sponsor tonight. Take care, everybody. Good night.
Outstanding.
Thanks, guys.
World-class vision, world-class this.
I'm a real leadership geek, honestly. I've spent my whole career reading books and chatting to people.
I just find the whole thing and the announcement, the way it's been announced, bizarre.
If you could move away from a model where teachers are so intensely focused